Hello and welcome to the Local Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Johnson. The Local Leaders Podcast provides a platform for successful business owners to share their stories, their experiences, their advice, and their ideas in order to help our listeners achieve more success in their business and in their lives. Get ready, another great show is coming up. Hey, good afternoon to all our listeners of the Local Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Johnson, and welcome back after Christmas. We're excited to be back and excited to have you listening to us again. And we're even more stoked to have Matteo Rachocki on with us today from Voodoo out of Meadville, Pennsylvania. I did get Pennsylvania right, didn't I, Matteo?
Yeah, you got it right.
You know, I tell you what, man, I'm going slow since my Christmas break, and my brain just hasn't quite got back into it yet. But, you know, we're super stoked, as I said, to have Voodoo Brewing Company on with us today and be able to kind of hear your story. And with that, Matteo, I'm just going to hand it off to you, my man, and kind of let you tell our audience, our listeners, all about Voodoo Brewing and kind of what all you've done, what you've accomplished, and we'll take it from there.
Sure. Well, thanks. Appreciate the introduction. Again, very humbled and flattered to be on the podcast today. I know you wanted me to go into some details, a little bit of the history. I had found some early success during college years out in New York City, founding a business and sold it in 2019. But during that time was making some, pretty small investments in, local bars and found a lot of interest in craft beer. And through that process, I became aware of Voodoo, which was a pre-existing business. It was founded in 2005 and started making beer like 2007. And they found some financial hardships with Fannie Freddie collapse in 2009. And they were basically going into some bankruptcy proceedings. And through the business I had here locally in Meadville, we got to know the owner, and my brother even started doing some volunteer brewing and then turned into a full-time brewing position. But without the financial assistance and added business acumen, the business was failing. So he and I had a conversation the tail end of 2011, and I put together a crowdfunding initiative before it was even really referred to as that, just with family, friends, roommates, other acquaintances I had through business relationships, and threw together a very modest, kind of capital. And we did some restructuring on some of the loans. And one of my first things I wanted to do was get a tap room going. Restaurant hospitality was kind of my background at that point. So the direct to retail model was very important, I thought, to our P&L with a small brewery that had a 3,000 barrel capacity. Doing more retail was what we needed to do. So we pivoted from what was previously exclusively a distribution based model to almost exclusively a retail driven model. And we opened our first tap room in June of 2012. That was the beginning of kind of the rebirth of the company. We went really heavily starting in 2012 into a retail model. We opened a store every 2 years or sooner from that point on. We did our second location in Homestead, Pittsburgh in 2014. We did one in 2016 in Erie, Pennsylvania. Then about 9 months later, we opened our production facility. It also has a tap room, which is also at Meadville. And then that allowed us to do some other creative things with some Pennsylvania licensing and add additional stores in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, Grove City, Pennsylvania. We did some really cool things with the changes in the liquor law here with some of our retail and pop-up models. Like we have a shipping container pub that we drop off and activate. We have a food truck program called the Voodoo Trucks. So we kind of branched out into some different things with the changes in the laws here. But probably most notably, when we did the Grove City pub, that would have been 2017. we kind of recorded and documented the entire process and decided to use that as a playbook for franchising. So we decided to add that to the business financial model moving forward, to have some independent stores. So we've been really kind of kicking that around the last few years pretty diligently and intentionally, working with a group to market and activate independent stores and growing the brand. So it's been a pretty intense few years, from a very humble beginning to where we are at this point, but not for a lack of effort, with an amazing team and some good luck, I suppose.
Yeah, that's an amazing story, and one, I mean, it sounds like somewhat of an explosive growth type of range, because I believe you told me you've got 5 company stores total and 17 franchises currently.
In development, yes, we have 3 open franchise stores, and the rest are they're sold and in development, and so it's various stages.
Got it. Now, are you guys from the development? Well, let me come back to that franchise piece. I'm about to get ahead of myself because I get excited talking about that and kind of seeing how quickly you've been able to you and your team been able to pull this thing off. Let me go back to what you said. You did crowdfunding initiative, family and friends, before crowdfunding was cool. So that's interesting. And something I guess people have been doing all the time, but you also mentioned reworking some loans. So you essentially bought the whole Voodoo company. Is that accurate?
Throughout the series of a few years, yes. From 2012 to 2014, we fully acquired Voodoo Brewing. We did the first chunk right before 2012. It gave us controlling, interest in the company, and we bought out what remained in 2014, and rolled our company into a C corporation coupled with ESOP, which is an employee stock ownership program. So at the time we did that in 2014, we were the nation's smallest employee-owned craft brewery, which was kind of cool. And that was a great way to kind of transition from what would have been like your previous founder figurehead into a model that was equally as attractive to consumers, an employee-owned company. But yeah, that was basically how it happened in 2 stages.
Yeah, and so see, I've never been through that type of acquisition. I don't know if any of our listeners, if that's something that they're going through or have gone through, but I'm sure there were some challenges through that process. Anything that stands out?
I mean, absolutely. Like I said, the refinancing loans was a big step. Having myself and my brother, coming in at that time, we had no corporate ability to guarantee anything. So having people with good, solid credit that could do guarantees on kind of rebirthing a business was essential. When you're going to these conventional and non-conventional lending sources and you're asking them for reconsolidation or some past interest forgiveness or things of that nature, they want to see, who's coming to the table and how is this going to be different this time around. So making sure you have a good business plan put together and following through with it. We actually ended up paying all those loans off early, which was kind of the point. I just had a soft spot too with the fact that, this business was in my hometown where I grew up, and these non-traditional lending sources like redevelopment authorities or progress alliances that they use these pots of money to incubate small businesses. And if you don't repay it with interest, you can't foster, new business in your community. They rely on that. So, it was kind of like almost like a personal, goal to get those, put back in place and try to continue to grow our community.
Yeah, I'm sure there was a lot of learning going on through that process, and and again, I'm sure some of our listeners, have been through that process before, but it's just interesting to me that that you buy into that, and you're really buying that brand, but you're buying it with all the baggage, and then you got to go in and take care of that baggage, and figure out a way to make it successful. And you guys basically reinvented the business. kind of going from that distribution model, as you said, to the retail model. And how did you do that? How did you make the switch?
Well, it was, to me, very obvious that that needed to be the system. When you can only make so much beer, it's all about COGS and margins. So at the end of the day, taking a look at, well, we have a ceiling on what we can charge for our product, especially in Pennsylvania being a 3-tier system state. You have the manufacturer that goes to a wholesaler, they mark it up, that goes to the retailer that marks it up. And, there's a ceiling for what someone's going to pay for a case of beer, or at that point, 5 or 4-pack, 6-pack of beer. So having a tap room where you could do, essentially buy the fluid ounce, in a glass to the consumer, and your margins are highly increased in that way. It made a lot of sense when you're kind of restricted on the amount of liquid you can produce. And we hadn't had any local community presence. People knew there was a brewery in the back of that old building, but there needed to be a storefront, a place where people could visit and gather. So we put a lot of effort into that first tap room. We DIY built that thing ourselves and put a really creative spin on not just the aesthetic, but the function of it, going with more of like a European gastropub model and more communal seating. It was something kind of unique and new to the area, and it became kind of like an instant hit. And we knew we had something we could replicate and move outside of the local community. And that just to us made the most sense with the capacity restrictions we had and the ability to make some increased margin on it.
Yeah, and well, that makes total sense. And as you grew, did you replicate the that initial gastropub model with all your other locations?
Yep, we did, and we continue to do so. They all operate in a very similar capacity. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the only way to scale, I guess, is if you find the model and you perfect the model.
And I wouldn't say perfect, but it's yeah.
Well, yeah, that might be a stretch for any business, right?
We've always said 85%. 85% is.
Yeah. If you wait till you get to 100% perfect, you'll never move forward, right?
That's true.
Yeah, that's amazing. So, so you built the business up. Now, tell me, you said distribution as well. You got a production facility. That you built. How did that go? Did that take care of your capacity issues? Just give me a little story behind that.
Yeah. So when we opened our third tap room, the one in Erie, the one in Homestead, the one in Erie were very high volume, especially compared to the original Meadville, which still does, the volume that it does, but not compared to the other two, especially the other two combined. So we quickly exceeded our ability to produce, even if we just went to tap room only model. We did still have some distribution partners that we maintained throughout those years here in Pennsylvania. But we were no longer able to facilitate our distribution partnerships and retail stores outside of the corporate, tree. So we decided, hey, let's go ahead and get a production facility online. It'll allow us to do even more stores, re-engage with some of our distributors and ones that we pulled out with way back in 2012. We could re-engage with some of those folks. And so we did invest here locally in Meadville. It's right across from the original tap room on the other side of the railroad tracks. We have an old 84 lumber facility that we converted to our production brewery. We call it our forever home because it's it's an 11-acre creekfront property that we have the ability to continue to expand on as needed. But we're currently probably only using somewhere between 5 and 10% of its capacity as is. And we have a ton of built-in growth, which we really needed to have available, at a moment's notice. As we went into the independent store franchise model, we had to make sure we had the mechanism to continue to do supply for the demand that would be coming shortly. So we got those stores open. We did the couple extra stores, got up to one point where we had 6 corporate stores, and then really started branching out in the distribution side. Yeah,
that's awesome. Now, did you have this from where you are today? Did you start with that plan in mind? You kind of as a goal, at this point in time? Are you where you thought you would be? Did you see it bigger, smaller?
I have to admit, I expected to kind of be where we were, doing more retail and doing some retail outside of the state, and growing our distribution footprint. I can honestly say the franchise model was not only not on my radar, just it wasn't something I was considering until really sat down with one of my partners, Jake, and he had a kind of this epiphany that this might be a really great method to do this, because opening up licensed establishments, liquor industry related businesses, breweries, there's a lot of red tape or legal work that needs to happen when you go outside of state lines, sometimes requiring on-site brewing. So we wanted to come up with a model where if we already had our forever home with all this capacity, we want to keep building breweries to build tap rooms. So finding a way to have tap rooms built that didn't require brewing, this really fit nicely. So
yeah, that's interesting. And it's just like I said, it's just really amazing. I mean, you guys are you started with what you started with, had to turn it around and rebuild the whole business, and now, wow, look at where you are. Who would have thought? I mean, I don't know if you thought you'd own a production facility or not, but that's a whole nother business, isn't it?
It is. It has to be a very conscious decision, especially when you go that big, you scale that large. You have to be able to ensure you can produce enough volume and sell it into the marketplace and have the rebuy to continue that, because it has to be ongoing. So yeah, it was a very big step. It was definitely necessary where we were at that point in our business, and it also allowed us to do some other things as a result.
Yeah. Are you distributing outside of Voodoo tap rooms at the moment, or do you have outside
Yep,
customers?
absolutely. Yep. So we have the 3 open franchises. Coincidentally, 2 are in the state of Pennsylvania, where we already have distribution. The one is in Cleveland, where we have a distribution partner for the state of Ohio. The rest are in development. We obviously have to find a distribution partner in those areas that can facilitate the product. So that inherently, wherever there's a franchise in development, we have pre-existing distribution relationships. So places like Nevada, Arizona, Florida, Georgia. Right now we're in 23 states.
Man, that is just crazy, Matteo. Man, that's awesome. Congratulations to for all that you've done. And that kind of I know I've been going back and forth, and we talked about challenges a minute ago, but in building this business, I'm sure there were numerous roadblocks or obstacles that you've run into. Anything specific jump out as kind of the top 1 or 2 biggies that you've run up against?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's been a whirlwind, and like I said, it's been a large group of us just head down and hard work and having a little bit of vision, a little bit of luck. But at the end of the day, there's been a lot of challenges along the way. I would say, without a doubt, one of the most difficult things I've had to deal with professionally, personally, emotionally, physically over the last 18 months has been COVID. We can call it what you will, whether you had a plan or lack thereof of how you would deal with something like that. I think most entrepreneurs and professional folks can say they probably would have never been prepared for what came. Pennsylvania was one state that was pretty locked down twice, and having the ability to survive that, it was exhausting for a lot of my professional relationships that I have. People I talk to, is one of the most difficult things any of us have ever had to persevere through. You want to make sure you take care of your employees and their safety, and your customers and their safety, and somehow still keep the lights on, and the bills paid. So that was by far the most difficult thing we've ever had to deal with. I've always said that we were very blessed here to be considered an essential business and be able to pivot from our retail model back to distribution almost on a dime overnight. We just came into work one day. It's like, well, what are we going to do? Tap rooms are closed. We have 6 stores we can't open to sell our beer, where the primary revenue of our business came from. Well, let's activate relationships with grocery stores and sub distributors, and let's call those guys down in Florida that haven't ordered in a few months, and let's get them a truck of beer. And it we were very fortunate to be able to pivot like that, and a lot of small businesses couldn't. So for that, we were very thankful, and we were very blessed to be able to do that. But that was without a doubt, I would say at the top of the list for sure. It's almost distant second to any other challenge. Of course, there's been many, but that being probably the largest.
And do you guys have menu in the tap rooms as well? Do you have food?
We do, and it's actually gotten to the point now where we have a central kitchen down in Pittsburgh where we are producing all of the food products, or not all of them, but most of the food products for the corporate stores, and distributing out that way. Things like pizza shells and marinara, beer cheese, hummus, like those types of things. All of our salad dressings and sauces, and the fact that can all go out fresh weekly from Central and done consistently the same way week over week is very exciting, and it allows us to do a pretty extensive menu, but very well done menu that's produced in relatively smaller kitchens with a little bit limited staff, I would say.
Yeah, that's and the reason I asked that was because a lot of establishments, or food-based establishments anyway, were able to pivot during COVID, to kind of the takeout model. But I was thinking, a brewery, and depending on the laws of your state, I don't know if that was an option to go into takeout. Was that ever part of the COVID response for you guys?
In part, I would say a lot of our tap rooms, because they were gathering places, we were never really identified, I think, as a place to grab dinner, to carry out, or to go. Yeah. Especially because it was just such a dine-in type establishment. So our production facility, we did do like a beer and pizza combo, curbside or delivery type situation for a little while there, and that worked out pretty nicely because that kind of goes together and it's an easy carry out thing. But yeah, to execute a lot of our menu for carry out and then trying to like reassemble it or have it elsewhere, just didn't it didn't evolve into that. We were really in the hopes that we'd be able to get past it and reopen under more typical circumstances.
Yeah, and that was the case for a lot of businesses, and you didn't see a lot of brewing companies that really were able to take advantage of that whole takeout delivery model that a lot of restaurants relied on during the change. But you had the distribution business that you, like you said, pivoted to, and were able to continue to create revenue or earn revenue during that period. So it's great to have options, and I'm glad that was there for you, because look where you are now.
Yeah, we are too. Trust me. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sure that's part of your plan now. And with COVID where it is, and we thought it was finally getting better, and now it's starting to get worse again. God forbid they shut us all down again. I hope that doesn't happen. But at least we know how to react now, right?
Yeah, to an extent. Every time it's a little different and probably more challenging, but we will persevere.
Yeah, that's all we can do is keep trucking. So for all our listeners out there, don't despair. Just keep doing what you're doing. If what you're doing is not working, do something different and find a way to make it work so you can survive. And I wanted to ask you about, because to me and a lot of our listeners are interested in someday franchising their business. So I just thought I'd ask a little bit more about the franchising process and kind of what it took to get to the point to where you could actually sell a franchise business, and maybe just kind of give us a quick education on that process, if you don't mind.
Well, I'm still learning it. I'll tell you right now, I'm by no way an expert, but I know what we did pretty early on. Like I said, after we kind of developed the playbook, building out the Grove City tap room, we had to do a small business loan to get ourselves legitimate. And franchising is federally regulated and has a lot of work and paperwork associated with getting legal. So that's the biggest hurdle we had, was getting through the steps in the process with good legal counsel, getting legal, just getting set up and having all the documentation in place, and then pursuing certain areas. There's certain actually every state has different compliance and what it entails to be legal to enter into that state, to even discuss franchising, let alone open a store. So kind of picking out a model that works for you and how you plan to grow it, and getting that plan in place. And then the marketing side is probably the biggest piece of it. You might have a great business and a model that works and great P&Ls and easily replicated and all of that, but to actually reach someone who's looking for an opportunity like what you may have, that's probably the next biggest piece, finding a good way to reach those people. And that's been a big learning curve for us too, working with the broker network. And we have a franchise development company that helps us on our side with marketing. And that's a big part of how I feel like we've gotten to where we are, is finding good partners in that regard.
Yeah. Did you try to kind of do that and take on that lead generation process and franchise development process yourself to begin with? And then
we did. We sold our first 3 units strictly by word of mouth. We never really tapped much into the broker network. We tried to, monkey around with it a little bit on our own. But a lot of it was just by word of mouth and by contacts that we had, or, the timing of it was pretty interesting because a lot of people were shifting post-COVID to new models, new concepts. People are looking to reinvigorate or rebrand a business, convert a business. So that was where we found a little bit of, again, luck and tact was in the timing of that. But after the 3rd store, we caught some attention from some marketing folks and development folks that, this is something that's got a lot of potential. If they're 3 stores already and haven't put anything into it from that side, let's put a little bit behind it and see what happens. And that's what happened.
Yeah, and voila. It's more explosive growth. And I think many entrepreneurs, restaurateurs, et cetera, who are going into franchising, a lot of people take it on themselves to begin with. And I would guess in general, it's a slow roll, but like you said, you had kind of the word of mouth and were able to get those 3 out the door and attracted the attention of some folks who could help you really scale up fast. And, how has that impacted you guys with all the units that are in development now? What does that mean to you guys?
Well, it means a lot of infrastructure. So we already knew we could do the supply side, doing the food, the beer, no problem. But, now we're talking simultaneous projects that need to find real estate and that need to get licensing and work with contractors and architects and get drawings and come up with a design narrative and, kind of building SOPs and things that, it was fine enough to do 1, 2, 3 at a time, but doing 15, 17 stores at one time, it's a lot for a really small group of guys that, slept on bunk beds together in college. So we had to, unfortunately for the first time, or fortunately, however you want to look at it, we had to actually kind of do some recruiting for the entities to bring some people in that had built-in skill set and knowledge and processes that they could implement as we went from, a few stores to a lot of stores at once. So that was, I would say, without a doubt, the biggest part of it was getting an internal infrastructure, personnel, they could facilitate the same caliber of service that those first 3 stores received across the next 30. And we wanted to make sure that was maintained. And so getting that in place for sure.
Yeah. And that's, I'm sure that's probably a continual work in progress as you continue to think about growth and where you guys are going. So that'll probably be a never ending piece going forward, I'm assuming.
Yeah. With a lot more luck, and that would be fantastic, doing it. And what's nice too, is you can kind of control it. The broker network, you have kind of the ability to, you kind of get out what you put in, and, you can do different ways in which the units are being packaged and sold, and kind of controlling what I call the faucet, right? Like that faucet can be wide open or it could be a trickle. So we had kind of put a little bit of a restriction on that faucet while we were getting our infrastructure put in place. And, we're really excited to hit, 2022 with this, this restructuring and the workforce that we have to go back in there and turn the faucet back on.
Yeah. Now, when do you expect to have all these new opportunities or businesses, independents up and running? Do you think you'll get them all going in 2022?
I think most of them will be open next year. We try to work within a 4 to 6 month timeline from the time that they execute a lease. Some states are a little bit different with licensing and whatnot, but for the most part, we have, I would say, around a 6-month project timeline. And a lot of these stores will be open starting end of Q1 and going into the summer. We're actually really excited to see all of these projects get open.
Yeah, and then you go back to the spigot, right? And you turn it again, or the faucet, and crank it back up and get ready for the next round.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what's the ultimate goal? Do you have a number in mind of units, or kind of where you want to be?
I mean, we have some ideas in our heads where, again, trying to make sure that we kind of control the faucet. We have some thresholds where, if we do Discovery Day here at the brewery and we bring in 10 or 12 potential groups, and we were at a 95% close rate. So people coming to a Discovery Day, 95% of them were actively engaging in the franchise program after a visit. So a lot of that just comes down to, ensuring that we know exactly what projects we have and those timelines and what we have to support those projects. And then we just kind of control that faucet. So we have some numbers in mind, ranges of numbers where, we're going to start reconsidering, how open that faucet remains on that side. But yeah, I mean, there's really no ceiling. I would say the longer we continue to do this, the larger that number would become. But we definitely have kind of set growth as far as, exponential numbers year over year.
Yeah. It's exciting to see something like that, or to see someone like yourself and your team, guys that you're working with and gals potentially, to be able to grow a business and really scale it up and go from basically nothing to something amazing. And again, congratulations to you and your team to be able to have accomplished what you have so far. Hey, I'm gonna switch gears on you a little bit and just maybe touch on a couple other topics. Like, and look, let me check the time here. Okay, we got a few more minutes. I want to talk about marketing and technology. So let me go technology first. What have you guys had to implement from a technology standpoint to run like the retail portion of the business? You said you weren't real heavy in like delivery and takeout, so maybe some of the new wave of the takeout and delivery tech maybe isn't part of it. But what are you guys doing there? And I'm talking, POS and QR codes and virtual menus and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so we're pretty involved in all of that. Early on, we adopted a partnership with Square. Really early on, to the point where we had a direct communication with Square development, and we still do, which is great. A lot of the advances in the software technologies that Square has implemented is actually a byproduct of our partnership. Installing that in my first, second, third store, I kept having features and things that I wanted. They would actually develop the software and provide us updates. So we actually kind of like co-developed some of the processes that Square has, which is great. So I've actually really enjoyed working with them. We use them for a point of sale. It syncs with QuickBooks, which is great. My controller loves that feature, especially when you're running multiple stores and trying to get all that kind of compartment out. Here on the backside, on the brewery side, we don't have any crazy brewery software. We use VIP, which is a great inventory and sale tracking system that we use. A lot of our wholesalers use it. Everybody reports to that in real time. That's great for us. Not so great in states like Pennsylvania, where we have like a fourth tier. So you can't always identify exactly where the end user was. You might get it to like a sub distributor, and then it kind of closes that off. But that's some great software and technologies we're using here. We do a ton of cloud-based sharing here. A company as large as we've gotten, with people working all over the country, different time zones that need to access things in real time. Having the professional G Suite that we have has been a great tool. We use it a lot. We've been doing in the tap rooms some tableside ordering and QR code scanning type things for people that still want to be able to order from a table or things to go. Online store has been huge this past year, doing things, and our direct mail is the last thing I'd say we developed as a byproduct of COVID, being able to register our brewery in states where we could do direct home mailing of our products. And then people could add on, a koozie or a hat or a sweatshirt or whatever, and they could throw their 6-pack or 12-pack of beer in there and we could ship it directly to your door. So those are things that, were kind of a byproduct of COVID that kind of forced us to develop some of these things that maybe wouldn't have been, fast tracked otherwise.
Yeah, that's a handful, man. That's a lot of work, getting all that set up and in place. And, it's just amazing to see. Again, thinking back to when you were buying Voodoo, who would have thought?
I almost wish I could have walked you into that place on day one just to see it. I actually keep a picture of it on my wall as a reminder. This was the first day that I walked into Voodoo Brewing. That's what it looked like in the tap room.
Oh my word! For everybody that's watching on YouTube, that's pretty rough looking right there, my friend.
Yeah.
Nothing but a pile of pallets in the floor, it looks like.
Yeah, it was something. Yep. That's my old man and my father-in-law in there cleaning.
Oh man, I'll tell you what a great story. And you still got a hopefully a long life ahead of you and lots of time to, really blow this thing out. And I don't know, I'm not even gonna ask you about exit strategy. You guys might be talking or thinking or kind of planning for, if that's an option, but for the right money, I guess everything's an option, right?
Absolutely.
If anybody's listening that has a big pocketbook, we've got a great opportunity in Meadville, right? All right. Hey, let me just touch on marketing real quick, and we'll wrap this bad boy up. Marketing plan for the retail business is it primarily social media driven? Do you have a marketing team in place? Just kind of give me the quickie on the marketing side.
Yeah, so absolutely. With our pubs being very community based, we have a great newsletter people opt into. It's a way we also do some of our limited beer releases. So it's a great way to keep people engaged, keep them subscribed, what's going on. I can't stress enough the importance of that, especially as more and more people are actually getting off of social media, especially in the last 2 years. I think more people are shifting or changing platforms, and I can't stress enough the importance of just an old-fashioned, great newsletter with good content and photos. Our in-house marketing department here does a fantastic job of doing that every week on Wednesday. You can set your watch to it. It's great. Yes, we are with like all the big, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. There are still great ways to engage. Every one of our stores has its own social media page that kind of trickles down from the headquarter page. Now, when we build marketing plans or we're doing programming, we have to think much larger than ourselves, including our franchise stores as well. So just kind of coming up with what content's being shared and when, making sure it's timed appropriately, so that we can get the most engagement and also the most benefit from consumers actually making their way to your stores or even to the grocery store to pick up, a new release of something that just hit the shelves. So no, those things are very important, and having that very systematic and knowing how you're going to set that up is important. And getting people to know how to do that is the way to go. Trying to DIY that, if you don't know, it can almost be a waste of time or to your detriment when you have bad or poor engagements with people trying to reach your products.
Yeah. How did you figure out? That just made me think. I mean, when do you hit the point to where it's no longer DIYable?
I guess it comes down to time, work-life balance, and really what, it's been an interesting thing to, go from, my brother and I being the only two employees at Voodoo to over 100 employees, at one point pre-COVID, just establishing when you hit your critical mass on something and being willing to try to bundle, package it, and hand it off to somebody.
Yeah.
And it comes down to everything. And there's even fragmented pieces of other big departments that become departments, that it's not just a part of one person's job. It now becomes a person's job to run a group of people doing said job.
Right.
So just understanding when, and usually, you find out from exhaustion, or your better half will tell you it's time. And, you end up, kind of establishing those new areas where you'll have some delegation there.
I think that's one of the big challenges for a lot of our restaurant owners, especially. I see a lot of marketing work that's gone out there, from website to social media to all the other things that are going on, and it's hard sometimes for people to want to let go of that. You get to a certain point though where you've got so much on your plate, that engagement and marketing effort kind of starts to slide downhill, and the next thing you've got your revenues are suffering, or customer satisfaction, or whatever it may be, and it's just really difficult. It's a difficult part to figure out. Okay, when should I get out of the way and bring in some help? And
absolutely. And then the question is, do I do that internally? Do I use a third party group? That's
right.
Then you got to run that, and kind of establishing for yourself. I mean, we were really lucky early on. Our graphics artists, our graphics department actually began prior to the marketing department. And I think the marketing department is almost a byproduct of having a good graphics department, especially in today's age. So, I mean, again, even that too, a lot of people are like, oh, but I only need this or this occasionally or whatever. And, someone like a craft brewery that's come out with new products and has to do label art and compliance work and things like that, it made a lot of sense for us to bring that in internally. But I mean, even decisions like that, and like, what do you do first,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Do you outsource it first, or you just go ahead and bite the bullet and bring in the resources that you need? I guess it depends on kind of your long-term plan and your capabilities, what you can afford. And there's so many different factors, but yeah, that's the hard part, I think, for a lot of people. So, man, you just chocked us full of a lot of information, a lot of great knowledge, from all the things that you've been through over the last, I guess, 10, 12 years. I know you guys are proud of where you are. And, as we wrap this thing up, any last words of wisdom or final comments or anything that you wanted to share that I didn't ask you about?
No, again, this was great. Again, I'm very flattered to be given the opportunity to speak, and hopefully someone finds something I said useful. And we've got all the social media platforms. If anybody's looking to reach out, you can find us there. But no, I really appreciate the time today. Thank you.
Hey, well, you are extremely welcome, and we appreciate you sharing all your expertise and knowledge and lessons learned, and all the great decisions and all the maybe not so great decisions that come into owning a business, because we all make them. And you just got to be able to face up to it when you have a bad one, and move on to the next one. So anyway, thank you for sharing everything that you have. I think it'll be a great help for our listeners. And again, if any of our listeners out there have any questions or anything, they can funnel them through us, and we can reach out to Matteo at Voodoo Brewing Company anytime and try to get you some answers. But we appreciate you listening. Again, Matteo, thanks for being on and taking time out of your day. And for all our listeners, thank you for being a part of the Local Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Johnson, and I'm going to sign off and see you at the next rodeo. Thank you.